We're live?
We're live?
Woo! Hi! Welcome
Yeah.
back to High on History.
Ooh, coffee.
So, I'm Jordan. And
I'm Liz.
we have been discussing over the last week women's suffrage.
Yeah.
It's a big thing in the media. It's a big thing in our lives. And
Being women and all.
and I had no idea who Susan B. Anthony was. I actually had her confused with Betsy Ross. So I obviously made some dumb comment. I don't even remember what I made, but obviously confusing the two. And that started the whole rabbit hole of who Susan B. Anthony was and like all of women's suffrage movement. So first and foremost, let's start out in the year 1820. On February 15th is when she was born in Adams, Massachusetts. Her parents were abolitionists. They were women's rights activists. Pretty much what we would call a social justice warrior family.
Nice.
Yeah,
strong roots.
Yeah, she got to grow up a pretty cool life. She was exposed to the ideals of activism at a very young age. And she was a school teacher. She was a headmistress for a girls' school in New York for a little while through her early 20s and early adulthood. And then in July of 1848, we had the first Seneca Falls Convention. Actually, I think it was the only Seneca Falls Convention, but it was the first of the women's rights and women's suffrage movement getting together and gathering. A lot of abolitionists, including the big leader and formerly enslaved Frederick Douglass. He was in attendance, and it was organized by I always say her name's Candy. It's Elizabeth Cady
Stanton.
Yeah.
I've definitely heard her name before. She comes up a lot. Yeah.
Well, she was the one who organized it with a lady by the name of Lucretia Mott, I think is how you say her name. And they wrote out a list of demands called the Declaration of Sentiments.
Okay. Now, that was roughly based on the Declaration of Independence, right?
Yeah, strongly based off the Declaration of Independence.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that was the Declaration of Sentiments, right?
Yeah, the Declaration of Sentiments. And it pretty much demanded better education for women. We were limited to, Sunday school. And if any education, it was really refined. It was really, our education back then was not a priority for women. So we demanded better education, professional opportunities, which I'm sure you will touch on next week.
Yeah.
Which I look forward to hearing about the bread and roses. I'm really interested in that.
Yeah, that's a great story too.
There is also a demand for women to be able to control property, and that includes being able to control our own bodies.
Right.
That includes being able to control our purses, and as well as voting rights, which even today our voting rights are being threatened. Frederick Douglass, I don't know why I keep trying to add an S to Frederick. There's no S. Anyways, he had observed while he was at Seneca Falls Convention the intelligence, the organization that women had. And in his newspaper, I believe it's either the North Star or the Northern Star. I don't entirely remember what the name of the paper was, but it was
I think it was the North Star.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've read that.
It was an anti-slavery newspaper that he published. And in that he observed, quote, in respect to political rights, there can be no reason in the world for for denying to women the elective franchise. And he pretty much meant when he said that we should have the right to vote. We should be able to...
The elected franchise. In other words, be enfranchised.
Yeah, that we are smart enough that we're pretty much we are smart enough to be able to cast what's the word I'm looking for? A...
Ballot?
Not necessarily a ballot, but like an educated vote.
Right. Oh, okay.
But I didn't want to use the word educated.
Right, because education was part of what they were
demanding.
Yeah. Like over and over again, they used it against people. There used to be all these tests. That they would say, oh, you have to have a certain level of education, and then the tests were all stuff that only well-educated,
right,
largely white men would be able to pass. So yeah, that was definitely something.
So around the time of 1851, Elizabeth Stanton and Susan B. Anthony became best friends. They were inseparable. They did a lot of traveling together. They were constantly giving demonstrations, presentations, organizing marches and protests. They were lobbying states to appeal certain rights and not appeal certain rights, but appeal certain acts. And by 1969, the two women together...
1869.
I said 19.
You did. What's the summer of 69? But like 1869.
They founded the National Women's Suffrage Association, and that focused on particularly petitioning the government. They focused on appealing to states, like I mentioned, petitioning. They wrote plenty of articles, obviously going around and touring, giving their speeches. They also sacrificed their freedom. A lot of women spent some time in jail over this. But before I talk about some of the horrible things that the women had to actually go through, I do want to slightly touch on the 14th Amendment real quick, because this is going to be a big part of what I'm about to start talking about.
Right.
Now, the 14th Amendment protects rights and liberties of all citizens, including formerly enslaved. This grants citizenship, due process, and voting rights. It was ratified in 1868. Now, but...
It turns out all citizens doesn't even a little bit really mean anybody.
This is about to get ugly.
Right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That does not include women, and that does not include anyone of color. That is pretty much lower class white men.
Right. So all it did was take voting rights out of the hands of white landowners.
Yep.
And give it to white men in general.
Yep.
Whether
Including
they were
indentured servants who had gained their freedom, and any other...
Kind of regardless of origin and status.
Yeah. So...
But it didn't include women at all.
No women,
and certainly not black people at this point.
Absolutely not at this point.
Right.
So... In 1872, just a couple years after the 14th Amendment was passed, which at that point, news got around really slow, so it took a while for a lot of news to get out, a lot of the amendments to be passed and whatnot. So, by 1872, this is what she really got famous for. I'm actually like, dude, Susan B. Anthony is such a spitfire, but she got arrested for casting a vote.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And like, she did register sort of registered properly, right?
So, yeah, the fun thing about this is using the 14th Amendment that I mentioned. She actually threatened to sue the election board and got her way to vote. And she voted for Ulysses S. Grant. And
you said a straight Republican ticket.
Yeah.
Right, because back then, Republicans were the ones defending what today I guess we would call progressive values?
They were leaders in the abolitionists. They were leaders in women's suffrage movement. The Republican Party was definitely way progressive for their time.
Yeah, at the time, and you know.
Yeah. So
how the mighty have fallen,
right? So about I think what I had read said 2 weeks, 9 days, something like that. I read a couple different articles, and anywhere between 2 weeks and 9 days, the cops caught up with her.
Right. Okay. So she registered to vote. Then she cast her ballot.
Yep. And she was
like,
proud.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And like within 9 days, the cops caught up with her and arrested her. Oh yeah. They made a spectacle out of her trial too.
Oh yeah.
Of course they did. They charged her for knowingly, wrongfully, and unlawfully voting for a member of Congress, which she did vote for a member of Congress. She voted for president. It was, like we said, it was a straight Republican ticket. And she was obviously spent some time in jail and charged $100.
Yeah,
fine of, yeah. Which to her dying day, never paid.
Yeah, not a cent. Not a cent.
Yeah, they never got a penny out of her. Which, I mean, even back then, a penny was big.
So, like, toast to Susan B. Anthony.
Woo! To my new hero.
Nice.
So, okay. Now, we're going to talk about the 15th Amendment. This amendment came into play in 1870. And this was a good amendment for, again, not women. So, okay, what the 15th Amendment did was it granted the right to vote to all men, all male citizens, regardless of race, regardless of color, or previously being enslaved.
It doesn't include Native Americans, though, does it?
No, this only includes black men.
Right. So, again...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love how repeatedly these amendments keep saying all citizens, but at no point have they so far meant all citizens.
Now, the 15th Amendment does specify all male citizens, regardless of race, color, or previously enslaved. So I assume, I'm probably interpreting this wrong, but I would assume that it would include all men of color, regardless of their...
Native Americans weren't citizens, so it wouldn't... And there was some citizenship, I'd have to fact check myself, but of course there was the Anti-Chinese Immigration Act, and I believe that was right around that same time, so... there might have been some other exemptions too, but basically this is supposed to include black men.
Yes. And this gives them the right to property, this gives them the right to vote, the right to citizenship, due process. That was the other one I was looking for.
Which just messes the movement right up, right?
Oh yeah. It caused a big divide in the movement.
Because up until this point,
the abolitionist movement and the women's suffrage movement were hand in hand.
Right.
Pretty much you couldn't talk about one without talking about the other. Right. And...
So basic divide and conquer.
Yeah, basic divide and conquer. And unfortunately, there was several big splits in the women's suffrage movement. The abolitionist movement did continue to support the women's suffrage movement.
Right.
Regardless. They got their rights. They're going to continue to fight for ours because we've been there for them the whole time.
Right.
So, when word finally traveled far wide enough that in 1870 the 15th Amendment had passed, at that point there had been two splits from the suffrage movement. There was Susan B. Anthony had split off with Stanton, forming their own party, and then another split from Stanton and Anthony's party was the National Women's Party, which was a little more militant. But Susan B. Anthony in 1978 had penned the first attempt of the 19th Amendment. And that petition included signatures from pretty much the entire Frederick Douglass immediate family. His son-in-law's name was on it, his daughter's name, his name.
That's beautiful.
So there was still a lot of unity in the movement, even though there was a lot of outrage.
Sure.
And rightfully so. Even 100 years later, I'm still offended hearing this. I'm outraged to know that the 14th Amendment didn't cover all citizens. We still had to fight for 15th and the 19th
and then
Amendment.
The 19th, right. And then the 19th Amendment
still didn't cover everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Because specifically, black women were left out of the 19th Amendment.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Specifically, they were left out of the 19th Amendment.
So, more divide and conquer.
Right.
Tale as old as time.
So, excuse me, my back hurts. Let's see. Let's see, we were talking about, okay. I'm gonna interrupt a little bit here, to kind of, because I think this is a great spot to put this. Do you know why women carry a purse now?
I do a little bit because we did talk about this. Yeah. But you got to tell this story because the way. Yeah. And for me personally, I don't think it's gonna change my overall style, and but I get it. So yeah, go ahead and explain it.
So the purse has become a symbol of the emancipation of women. And when I found that out, I was always anti-purse. I women always have to carry a purse.
Right.
To me, it was a symbol of, I don't know.
It was burden. It was chore. It was task. Women have to
make sure
carry everything. All the stuff for the kids. All that we have to keep track of everything. So it's part of our.
But back then, back 100 years ago, a woman didn't carry a purse. Not in any sense. Because she didn't have the right to her own goddamn money. Sorry, I shouldn't have cussed. Pardon me. Pardon my French. But anyways, a woman didn't have right to her own property. And Susan B. Anthony wrote, "Women must have a purse of her own, and how can this be so long as a wife is denied her right to her individual or joint earnings?" Reflections like these cause me to see and to really feel that there's no true freedom for women without possession of all their property, of all their property rights. And this demand must be made by petitions to legislator. That word is always a tongue twister for me. Legislator.
To legislature.
Yeah, legislator. Like I said, I don't like saying that word. That word is always wonky with me.
But, so then the purse here, representing holding their own purse strings, becomes, at least for a time, a literal symbol of our freedom. Our ability to own our own property.
To be able to be my money, my choice. To even own property. We weren't allowed to own property. We weren't allowed to do anything without a male's consent.
Right. Well, and that goes all the way into the 1970s. Women couldn't get credit cards.
Right.
Yeah. So my mom was alive and an adult.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, she's got gray hair, but she's not that old.
Right?
Yeah. And I realized that my grandmother, of course, lived most of her life without the ability to own the home that my grandfather built for them or have a credit card for just so long.
My great-grandmother was somewhere throughout this story that I've been telling.
That's beautiful.
I don't entirely know what my great-grandmother's role was in the women's suffrage movement, but I do know she went to the marches. She was a voice.
Mm.
So not only does this story actually, like, this is kind of my family history too, in a way.
That's wonderful. Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
But so, anyways, moving on to Susan B. Anthony's final years. Between 1900 and 1906 were kind of like her last Spitfire years. And in 1900 specifically, she had convinced, I personally think she bribed them, but she had convinced or persuaded the University of Rochester University to admit women. Now, the way she did this, and this is why I think she bribed them.
Well, that's your word for it, right?
This is my word, yeah, my word.
The wiki says persuaded.
Yes. She raised $50,000 to donate to that school, if they would accept women. Now, $50K, a lot of that came out of her life insurance policy. A majority of that actually came out of her life insurance policy.
She straight just paid him off.
Pretty much.
Nice.
Which is why I think she bribed him. Anyways. Persuaded. Now, and the reason why they used persuade, and it technically isn't a bribe, is eventually the university did pay back a portion of her life insurance policy.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so, I mean, tomato.
Right. It's a good investment.
Yeah, so this Spitfire of a woman, at a ripe old age of 86, kicks the bucket on March 13th, 1906. She lived a great life. She did a lot for us. And to honor her life, to honor her movement, in 1979,
you mean Carter?
Carter, thank you. Yeah, I was gonna say Nixon. Passed a little extra tidbit to the amendment. It wasn't really meant to be like a major law changer, but what he had passed to the 19th Amendment, besides changing its name to the Susan B. Anthony Act, was that she would be the first woman represented on U.S. currency, which is why we have the Susan B. Anthony dollar.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Now, I had mentioned earlier the National Women's Party.
Right,
the separation, a part of the separation movement between the 15th Amendment. Now, that party formed a protest organization was a protest organization founded by Alice Paul, and they was known as the Silent Sentinels. That screws with my mouth so bad. Or also known as the Sentinels of Liberty. It was 2,000 women that picketed and protested at the White House.
Wow.
Yeah.
2,000, that's a lot.
Huge number. They all wore white. And I don't actually remember why they chose the color white.
I don't know, but women in Congress still occasionally wear white today to symbolize various specific women's causes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This cool. Kind of been in the news a couple of times fairly recently.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So on January 10th, 1917 is when they started protesting. They had really cool banners. I actually really like a lot of these banners. A lot of them were taunting the president, Woodrow Wilson, at the time. A lot of the banners would say, "Mr. President, how long must women wait for liberty?" Or, "Mr. President, what will you do for women's suffrage?" And my personal favorite? They compare him to the Kaiser William II of Germany.
Oh,
which,
wow.
At the time, I'm not going to touch German history. I'm just not going to touch German history. This is right around World War I breaking out.
And you said they picketed there for a long... I remember you telling me they held out for 2 years. That is...
Yeah, from 1917 to
That's the kind of staying power that we're gonna need, you know.
Yeah. Over 500 women were arrested. 168 of them served a good portion of their time.
Served kind of hard time.
Hard time,
right.
Yeah. So while these women were in prison, they were on a hunger strike. They were force fed. There was a lot of abuse, a lot of torture. They were harassed. And then specifically on November 14th of 1917, it's referred to the Night of Terror. And I only found this today. And I'm really actually kind of grateful that I only briefly found it today. It was horrifying what happened on the Night of Terror.
Pretty much all the bad that you can imagine, right?
All the bad. Yeah. I mean, I already mentioned abuse and torture. I mean,
and it was the prison guards.
Prison guards having their way. And so that and because of that night, all of the women who survived were pardoned and released. And that kind of helped push, after 42 times of being denied, the ratification of the 19th Amendment.
Wow.
Yeah.
But but that didn't happen until
1920, a year after, almost 3 years after the Night of Terror.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And from 1917 to 1920, it was denied 42 times by Congress.
Wow.
Yeah. And actually what changed the vote, what finally passed it, was this young new, I think he was a Republican. I forgot to write his name down. It was Henry... Henry Bow... but I don't know. I think his name's... I think it was Henry something. But he was talking with his mother, and he was actually going to vote against it in opposition of the 19th Amendment.
And then it wouldn't have passed.
Yeah, and then it would not have passed. But he talked to his mama, and whatever that sweet woman told him changed history.
Wow.
Yeah, and the 19th Amendment is the rights of citizens of the United States to vote. Shall not be abridged by the United States or any state on account of sex. 100 years it took for us to get the right to vote.
Well,
if not longer.
Well, I mean, that depends on how you want to...
Yeah. I'm counting it.
But like from where we started, 1848, and then...
But, no, there's a catch to this. Black women still don't get the right to vote.
Still left out.
Still left out. Black women don't get the right to vote. So this brings us still to the civil rights movement now. All the way up to 1964.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's kind of big. So...
Yeah, explain why 1964 is big and important to the right now. Because we were talking about that earlier, too, the Voting Rights Act, right?
Yeah, so the Voting Rights Act today, from 1964 has actually just been attacked as of 2013. I believe the exact date that it was attacked was June 25th. I had that date memorized. But anyways, pretty much the Voting Rights Act of 1964 grants all people of color due process, the right to vote, property ownership, right to education, pretty much everything the 14th, 15th, and 19th Amendment
somehow failed to do.
Yeah, everything they failed to do got kind of dogpiled in an act.
Yeah, and then it's not an amendment.
Not even a proper amendment to the Constitution. So I'm going to backtrack and rewind real quick because I think this is a really important statement made by a woman by the name of Adela Hunt Logan.
Oh, right.
Yeah, dude. I wish I touched a little bit more on her. This quote just showed up randomly, but she said, if white women need the vote to protect their rights, then black women, victims of racism and sexism, need the ballot even more. And she said that, I want to say almost 100 years before. I want to say she said that during the Seneca Falls Conference. Yeah. She said it almost 100 years before women of color got the right to vote.
Amazing.
Yeah. And as we were just mentioning, how the Act of 1964 is being threatened. So what the Supreme Court actually ended up deciding, because I had to find this out, and I'm pissed. So basically the decision was that it is unconstitutional to use the coverage formula that was determined in the original 1964 Voting Rights Act to determine which jurisdictions are subject to pre-clearance requirements. And what I found that summary meant, in other words, was it allows states to enforce voter ID instruction laws based on populace and demographics.
In other words, they can target areas that are mainly populated by people of color or Democratic voters or something like that, or like poverty or something.
That is exactly what that means.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, I know you and I follow the news, and that's what they're raving about. Like, every time they're talking about moving the voter demographics, they're talking about violating our rights to vote.
Right.
They're legit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the Supreme Court decided that it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, no, so to this day, our rights are still being threatened.
It also kind of like puts a fine point on, we study history, and like you and I in particular, we're super fond of the really ancient history. We're gonna spend a ton of time on things that go as far back as Göbekli Tepe,
Right.
Because we love that stuff. But also, history is a living, moving thing. We're talking about, we started in 1848.
Yeah, 1848 with the...
And here we are, this is 2024.
Yeah.
And so nearly 200 years later, not quite, but almost 200 years later.
Oh.
And the names have changed, the fight remains more or less the same.
Yeah.
This enfranchisement, trying to make sure that people are enfranchised properly.
Yeah.
So we're always a part of that story. We are the history.
Yeah.
And I think that's a kind of an important point to make. Anyway, go right ahead. Yeah.
And then, I mean, I forgot to add this back in the timeline, but a fun little fact: in 1917, when New York decided to pass women's suffrage rights, there was a bunch of states that passed it. Wyoming was the first state. ever to actually pass women's rights, granting them
and
basic rights.
What year was that?
And that was 1869.
Oh, not bad. Okay.
Yeah, so the first state giving any women the right to property, the right to holding her own purse, that was granted in Wyoming in 1869. But it was specifically New York in 1917 during Woodrow Wilson's presidency. Out of everything that happened, the Silent Sentinels, the Night of Terror, 100 years of protesting.
None of that moved him.
None of that moved him. It took New York giving women due process, a little bit of owning property. Oh, you want to go work at the factories? Guess what? We're on the bridge of World War One. Sure, here you go. Here's some rights. That's what it took.
Wow. And at this point, too, they were going to need women, and there'd been...
Yeah.
So next week we're going to get into some other history and how labor strikes also, of course, played into this. How women, immigrant women in particular, also really helped to shape some of this story. But
that's pretty much a wrap on history. At least for Susan B. Anthony and what I learned about the women's suffrage movement. I found a new hero, that's for sure.
Right.
Yeah,
she's definitely a spitfire.
Yeah. And a fun little fact, this year in the Macy's Day Parade, women's suffrage movement was actually recognized for the first time ever.
Oh, wow. In the Macy's Day Parade?
Yeah.
That's very cool.
We were represented by the tallest balloon and her first appearance in the Macy's Day Parade as well.
Susan B. Anthony's?
No.
Who's her?
Not we. Macy's Day Parade decided to use Minnie Mouse.
Oh, that's so kind of cool.
I woke up and missed it. I wanted to see it. I was so excited because I had spent literally a week and a half working on this project, and then the news the night before had announced that Minnie Mouse was going to be represented for the women's suffrage movement.
And you missed it.
I woke up in time for Santa.
Whee! I mean, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so very much for sharing. Next week, I'm going to be talking about Helen Todd and Rose Schneiderman, and a little bit about how the labor movement intersects the women's suffrage movement also. So
I can't wait. I want to unionize so bad. Whisper the call center.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you haven't yet and you enjoy what we're doing, please like, share, subscribe, and we will see you guys next week. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Have a great day. Oh, live long and prosper.